This is Behind the Verdict. I'm John Horford with Myron Cook, and today we're getting into a new case, and we're going to give you an overview and probably 2 episodes of the Casey Anthony case.
The Caylee Anthony case.
Whatever Myrene says, go. So the Caylee Anthony case. Even though, okay, I wrote the overview as the Casey Anthony case, so please forgive me.
I'm sorry. Hey, look, I only interrupt you on that piece because I don't think Casey Anthony deserves the title or the lead, and I want it to focus on the 2-year-old who lost her life, and that's Caylee.
I agree. I hope that she sees this with her new TikTok fame and is reminded that she is a horrible, horrible human being. The Casey Anthony case remains one of the most controversial and widely publicized criminal trials in recent U.S. history. It centers on the 2008 disappearance and death of 2-year-old Caylee Anthony and the subsequent trial of her mother, Casey Anthony.
On June 16th, 2008, that's when Caylee Anthony was last seen alive. And on July 15th, 2008, a month and a day later, Cindy Anthony, Casey's mother, reported Caylee missing, stating she hadn't seen her granddaughter for 31 days. All the way down to December 11th, 2008, Caylee's skeletal remains were discovered in a wooded area near the Anthony family home.
The trial commenced on May 24th, 2011 at the Orange County Courthouse in Florida with Judge Belvin Perry presiding. The prosecution, led by Linda Drain Burdick, alleged that Casey Anthony used chloroform to render Caylee unconscious and then suffocated her with duct tape, subsequently storing the body in the trunk of her car before disposing of it. The defense, led by Jose Baez, countered that Caylee accidentally drowned in the family's pool and that Casey's father, George Anthony, helped cover up the death.
On July 5th, 2011, after 33 days of testimony and nearly 400 pieces of evidence presented, the jury found Casey Anthony not guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and aggravated child abuse. However, they did find her guilty of 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and fined $4,000, but was released on July 17th, 2011, due to time already served and credit for good behavior.
The verdict sparked widespread public outrage, with many criticizing the jury's decision. The case also led to the proposal of Caylee's Law in several states, aiming to make it a felony for a parent or guardian to fail to report a missing child in a timely manner.
In the years following her acquittal, Casey Anthony has largely stayed out of the public eye. However, she has resurfaced occasionally, including participating in a 2022 Peacock docuseries where she reiterated claims that her father was involved in Caylee's death. In March 2025, she joined TikTok to reintroduce herself and promote her legal advocacy work. Man, that was hard to say.
I can tell you are struggling to get through that. The Casey Anthony case continues to be a subject of public fascination and debate, highlighting issues related to the legal system, media influence, and public perception.
Okay, John. One of the reasons I really wanted to do Casey and Caylee, really Caylee Anthony's case, was for a couple reasons. One, if you can see and you're watching this, you see I'm wearing a little pin. It's a pinwheel, and it is a symbol for Child Abuse Awareness Month. That's April. So April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. Prosecutors, law enforcement, those involved with children, the children's assessment centers across the state all hold different types of events to generate awareness about child abuse and try to make sure that everyone knows if this is something you see happening, suspect happening, you need to report it, because children don't often have a voice and we need to be their voice for them. That is the second reason I wanted to do this case, because Caylee Anthony was 2 years old when she was murdered by her mother. And yes, I know the jury found her, acquitted her. I'm not going to say they found her not guilty.
I know, when you read that, you were just like, oh.
It was so hard for me, I'm going to say. But this is so hard because no one is remembering Kaylee. It's about Casey. She tried to make it about her father, about other members of people. She tried to pin it on a babysitter. I mean, we'll get into all of those
A
details.
babysitter that was never her babysitter.
Yeah. We'll talk
So
about
just a
that.
random person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casey told a lot of lies here, but that's the reason I wanted to focus on this case. During Child Abuse Awareness Month, we need to talk about this so that people will come forward if they see this happening, and maybe, just maybe, one child like Kaylee will be saved, and that's important.
Absolutely. So should we start at the very beginning?
Yeah, I think we need to talk a little bit about the family dynamic of the Anthony family. So there was George Anthony, who was Casey's dad, and he was a retired deputy sheriff for a county in Florida where they lived. Cindy Anthony was Casey's mom, and she was a registered nurse. And then Casey had a brother by the name of Lee Anthony. He testified at the trial and was involved to some degree, but there wasn't as much focused on him as there were other members of the family. And then we have Casey herself. She got pregnant at 18 with Kaylee. She had kind of two boyfriends at the time, and she never disclosed who the father was.
I don't know if she knew, though.
I don't know if she knew either, but later, years later, she claimed that she was drugged at a party she was at and raped. She never said any of that until Kaylee's death.
Yeah.
So my opinion, and it's just my opinion, that was a way to seek attention for herself because she was very good at that.
And she kind of did have a lot of boyfriends, like you were saying, or at least in that time period she did, because the person who she ended up being engaged to couldn't have been Kaylee's father at all, correct?
Yeah, I think her fiance actually had a paternity test done, and he was not the father, and I think that was one of the reasons they broke up.
But the timeline didn't line up anyway, because I thought that he said that he was going to raise her, but that she had an issue with how close they were, and she wanted more of the affection versus him giving affection to Kaylee.
Well, you know what that means? Casey wasn't the center of attention, so she had to get rid of Kaylee. Right?
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
So Casey and Kaylee lived with George and Cindy from the time Kaylee was born up until her death and her disappearance in June of 2008. But Casey had gotten into a fight with her parents and left the home with Kaylee sometime around June 16th, 2008. And that's when Kaylee was about 2 years old and Casey was 21, 22. So if anybody has heard about this case ever, there is a photo out there of Kaylee that is just, it breaks your heart. She's wearing a little pink nightgown. She's got her hand on her head and she's watching TV or something, and just the most big, beautiful eyes that you've seen on a child.
Absolutely adorable.
And this photo just went viral when she went missing, during the trial, even after. If you pull her name anywhere and Google, do any kind of search, that is one of the first photos that comes up. And it's heartbreaking that this child has no life. And quite honestly, all the evidence does point to one person, and it was the person who was supposed to protect her the most, the person who was supposed to love and care for her and take care of her. It was her mother.
I think one of the most disturbing things about the death, because I guess we don't necessarily know how she died, but was the fact that there was food and her toys and other things like that found in the car, and she was just kind of out partying. So it feels like it's very likely she just left her child in the car to fend for herself with toys and some food, and she passed away.
Well, when Casey's brother Lee testified at the trial, he said that Casey was, I want to say the quote was, a manipulative bitch. That when she left the home because she was mad at the mom and dad, she was taking Kaylee with her because the parents would have kept Kaylee. If Casey wanted to go party, that's fine. Kaylee could have been at home with grandma and grandpa, safe and sound, tucked in her bed, watching a Disney movie, whatever.
And she did that often. She'd be like, I'll be back in a couple hours. And then she would come back days later.
And she would be gone for days.
Yeah.
But in this circumstance, she was mad at her parents and took away the one thing that they loved, that she thought they loved most, which was Kaylee. And so it wasn't uncommon for her to go partying and have Kaylee in tow, going to parties at apartments or houses or whatever. And there's cute little Kaylee wanting to take a nap and she's asleep on the couch and there's partying going on around her. But Casey had a car that belonged to her parents and she drove that. And there's a lot of evidence the police found in that car that point to the fact that she did murder her daughter.
What are some of the most shocking or obvious pieces of evidence?
Well, one of the things you just mentioned was there were her toys, there was a blanket, there was some food left in there that was childlike, if you will.
It was like pizza?
Yeah, and some other things, maybe fruit snacks or something else that maybe a kid would eat. But so the car got towed, and it had been in an impound lot for about 30 days when law enforcement called George and Cindy to say, hey, come pick up your car. And so there were, George picked it up and brought it home. And the very first thing they both said was it smelled like there was something dead in the car.
I listened to her call to 911 Cindy's, and she said that for whatever reason, and then later during testimony, she took it back, but she said it smelled like a dead body.
Yeah, she did. So that's one of the things I want to focus on right from the beginning before we get into the evidence in the car is that Kaylee was missing for 31 days. And her mother, Casey, never reported her missing, never called the police, never called her parents to say, help me find my daughter at all.
Although she claimed that the reason why she didn't go to police is because she was looking for her. They brought up a bunch of her friends and her boyfriend at the time, and they were like, not one time did she mention that her daughter was missing during that whole period of time. And she was with us all the time.
I call bullshit on that whole story from her because they surfaced a lot of photographs from those 31 days that showed Casey at parties, showed her drunk, showed her at bars and restaurants having a great time, showed her at dance clubs with her friend who was a DJ.
Her boyfriend.
She never mentioned anything about Kaylee being missing. And all of those friends and the boyfriend figured Kaylee was where she was always, which was with the grandparents.
Yeah.
But I found an interesting interview with Casey where they asked her point blank about that. And she said she was at all of those places looking for her daughter. When is the last damn time you saw a 2-year-old at a bar or at a club, a dance club late at night? Or
2008 when Casey was taking her daughter to parties with her, which you cited earlier.
But what she's claiming is Kaylee was there by herself.
I know, it's crazy. Or that she left. I mean, if she really was.
It's ridiculous.
Yes, it is ridiculous. Yes.
But it really sticks with me that Casey never called anybody. The reason she didn't call 911 and the reason she didn't call her parents and the reason she didn't tell her friends, hey, my daughter is missing, is because she knew exactly where the hell that baby was and she knew she was dead.
And she didn't care.
She didn't care.
She didn't care. That's the most eerie part about this case. She left a sweet little baby girl to die and could not care less.
You know, one of the witnesses at the trial was an employee of the junkyard where the car was towed initially. And he said he had been in the tow business for, 10 to 15 years, something like that. And he'd been around a lot of crashes and other places where death had occurred in or around a car. He said when he walked by that car, that's what it smelled like to him. It smelled like death.
Yeah. I mean, there was rotten food in there, like rotten to the point where there were maggots and bugs and things like that. So then that smell was attributed to that. But obviously there could have also have been a dead body in there that was then removed and disposed of.
And remnants left behind.
Yes.
Decomposition left behind.
Yeah.
But, Casey told so many lies in this case. She told the lies about looking for her daughter. She told the lies about maybe Kaylee was with a babysitter. And that lie right there is so baffling to me.
Because it's so easy to disprove.
She made up a babysitter claiming that she babysat for Casey when Casey went to work at Universal Studios. That's lie too. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But she names this lady, and she gives an address of an apartment where she says she dropped Kaylee off at.
But how did she know? Because the name was right and the apartment was like the person that she said was there, but they didn't have a relationship.
Well, she wasn't there. It had been abandoned for like 4 or 5 months or some.
Oh, had it?
Yeah, it had been abandoned. The lady had moved.
So,
but
she had lived there.
She had, but if you
But
think
how
about
did she
it,
know that?
if you think about it, back in the day, they would often put your name on your mailbox at an apartment complex.
So you think she just went to a random apartment complex?
No, she probably went to a party at this apartment complex.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah, and saw a name.
But the person, did she know? Was she like, oh, I remember Casey?
No, she didn't know her. She had no idea.
That makes it even weirder.
She had no idea. So she just picks this random lady and calls her a kidnapper. And so the police are looking for this lady. I mean, there's like an all points bulletin going out looking for her.
And unfortunately, I mean, she's also Hispanic. So then there could be like a racial component. I know we don't talk about that a lot, but it's like you also blame it on someone like that in a state like Florida. I feel like it brings up additional red flags.
Well, Casey was pointing it and deflecting at anybody else who it could be. And if she could inflame somebody else to think somebody else killed her sweet, adorable 2-year-old, well, let's point the finger anywhere I can other than at myself.
Yeah. And unfortunately, yeah, at her father, who seemed to be a really sweet guy by all accounts. I guess we can get to that later.
Yeah. So, the next part of that lie was her job at Universal Studios.
Yeah.
She frickin' didn't work there.
I thought she had worked there, but she got fired or hadn't worked there in a long time when she was claiming she did.
She was an intern before Kaylee was born.
Got you. So she had worked there technically, but it had been a long time.
3 years.
Yeah.
3+ years.
Yeah.
And so she told detectives that she worked there. And that's when this babysitter would babysit her daughter so she could go to work every day at Universal Studios. So they said, let's go take a look at your office. Let's go. Because they didn't believe her. So she literally goes with them to Universal Studios. They go into the building. They're looking around. She took them down I think it was maybe 3 or 4 different floors, and then got to the bottom floor in the basement. Oh yeah, my office is down here. I forgot. Really? But here's the best part. She gets to a dead end in the hallway, and then finally frickin' admits that I don't really work here.
They're like, yeah, we know.
No shit. It's very clear you don't work there.
Like, you've worked here for 3 years and you have no idea where your office is, and we're at a dead end.
It was crazy to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
But she did get found guilty of lying to police.
For misdemeanors. She should have been convicted of murder, is what she should have been.
I agree. It gets worse.
It does get worse.
It gets worse.
Horrible. It's horrible. So there was in August, on 3 separate days in August, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th of 2008, a meter reader would drive by that area, the wooded area near the Anthony home. And this was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, really. I mean, there was a small subdivision, but there wasn't any public restroom facilities, let's just say. And this meter reader needed to relieve himself. So he kind of pulled over and went to this wooded area. And it was kind of flooded, so he couldn't go in very far. But he said that he saw something sticking out of a bag, and he thought it was a skull. So on August 11th and 12th and 13th of 2008, he called the police and said, hey, I see something out here. You need to come investigate. And finally on the 13th, they sent somebody out. But unfortunately, that day, it was really hot. There were a lot of bugs because this was a swampy area. It was at the end of the shift for the officer. And the officer looked around a little, didn't really walk into the wooded area, didn't go into where the bag was located, said, I don't see anything, and left. Mm-hmm. But you got to give this meter reader some real credit here because he was still working that same neighborhood, that same beat in December. And on December 11th, 2008, he's back in that area, and now it's not flooded anymore. So he walks in a little farther to relieve himself, and he sees this time a laundry bag, and he sees a skull with some hair that he thought was human sticking out of it. So this time he didn't take no for an answer, and he called again and said, you need to get someone out here now. And when they got out there, unfortunately, Kaylee's remains, or at least parts of them, were located in a laundry bag wrapped in a blanket. The skull had long hair still attached to it. And then there was duct tape that would have been covering both the nose and the mouth. Because we got to remember, Kaylee is a really little girl. She's 2. And when you take a regular size piece of duct tape and you put that over the face of a child, it's going to cover both the mouth and the nose.
So you think that was done while she was still alive?
Yes, I do.
So you think that's what killed her?
I think that's part of what killed her.
What do you... Okay.
There's more.
Okay.
There's evidence of other things the mom did. But in October 14th of 2008, Casey was finally charged with murder, aggravated child abuse, the aggravated manslaughter, and the 4 counts of lying to police. It took 3 years for that case to get to trial. 3 agonizing years for those people to sit and wait to try to figure out what happened to Kaylee.
And she was in prison that whole time? She was in jail that whole time?
She was in jail.
Because they gave her time served, and she basically barely served because she had already served.
She was in jail
before.
for a lot of it, and then I think there was some cockamamie, stupid-ass bond reduction where she was released on, like, tether. And she actually lived with her lawyer, Jose Baez.
That's normal.
Yeah, that's what I would do. If I were a defense attorney, let them live with me. Not a fucking chance. But so jury selection itself took 11 days. Now, jury selection generally, in most cases, takes a day, maybe a day and a half. I think Karen Reed's case for jury selection in the second trial took about a week, maybe, to get all the people seated. But it took this case 11 days, and the trial lasted for 6 weeks. All of that time, the jury only gave 11 hours to deliberation after all of that.
I don't know how.
I don't either.
I mean, they must have really believed the story that Jose and Casey Anthony were telling about the father.
They spun a lot of stories in that trial. They spun a lot of the evidence. They spun so many things and tried to make poor Casey out to be the one who was the victim.
For sure.
She wasn't the victim. The 2-year-old was. And that just irritates the ever-living shit out of me.
We could either talk about it now or we could get into it in the next episode, but
The stupid quote. I want to do the stupid quote.
Oh, we could end with the stupid quote, and then next episode we could start off with some of the searches, the chlorophyll versus chloroform thing.
Yeah.
How the dad seemed to be actually a genuinely sweet guy.
Yeah.
And when they were being recorded when she was in jail and stuff, she was very like, you're a great dad, you're a great grandpa. And then she went off and was like, actually, you're a monster and you're the reason this happened.
All right. So let's do the quote piece.
Okay.
All right. So in this case, for a long time, Casey Anthony was kind of quiet, staying out of the media. But for whatever reason, she decided to resurface recently. And I want to end this episode with the stupid quote of the day. And the stupid quote of the day is from Casey Anthony. This is her quote. I'm reading it as her. I've been in the legal field since 2008. And in that capacity, I feel like it is necessary if I am going to continue to operate appropriately as a legal advocate that I start to advocate for myself and my daughter. What the fuck is she talking about? She's not an advocate. She wasn't in the legal field. She was on trial for murder. That's kind of like saying, gosh, I had a knee surgery and now I'm a frickin' orthopedic surgeon.
She's a legal influencer.
Is she going to give advice on how to murder your child and get away with it?
Yes.
Because that's one of the things she says. She's inviting people to email her with their problems and she will help them solve them. Shouldn't she maybe focus on solving the case of her daughter being murdered first? Shouldn't that be really where the focus goes?
And not really. She knows the answer to that.
Well, you're right. She just has to look in the mirror. She knows what happened.
Yeah, she knows exactly what happened. She left her daughter in a car to die while she went and partied.
You know, all of the facts in this case, all of the evidence points to the fact that she murdered her daughter because that little girl, that 2-year-old, adorable little child, was a burden to Casey. She couldn't go partying. It cramped her partying lifestyle. It cramped the single life.
But the thing that makes it all more nefarious is that, one, she didn't want the baby. She wanted to give the baby up for adoption, and the mom had kind of convinced her to keep the baby. The grandparents loved the baby. Just let the baby stay with the grandparents. But she couldn't do that either.
No.
That's what makes it all, that's what makes it like pure evil.
She didn't want her parents to have control. She took away the one thing that those grandparents loved, was that little baby.
Again, yeah, that's what makes her pure evil.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Pure evil.
100% on that.
Yes. Okay. If you agree with Myrene, well, and I guess me a little, but it's mostly Myrene. Myrene's one is always right. If you agree, tell us about it. Or if you disagree, because obviously there are people out there who think that, you know, she's innocent. The jury clearly did.
You know, they did at the time, but I've seen news articles that talked to jurors on that case, and at least 2 of them said they felt like they made a mistake.
That's a massive mistake to make.
It's a massive mistake. Our last episode we talked about Karen Reed. Reasonable doubt, sure. I can see that, right? Reasonable doubt. But in this case, what the hell was the reasonable doubt? I don't see it.
I don't know. I think it's because they cleaned up her image. They made her look more innocent. They got rid of the party girl thing. They made her look like a victim. They made it seem like the dad was, you know, a monster. And then I'd also heard that the parents were told that they weren't allowed to show emotion at the trial. And if they did, they would be kicked out. And they used that against them. Is that true?
So a lot of times you don't want people in the gallery showing too much emotion because the jury's going to turn and focus on what's going on in the gallery, the people seated, versus the evidence that's being presented. They're going to look to the parents or the grandparents all the time and not pay attention to what's on the screen or coming from the witness's mouth. I don't know about being kicked out if that's true or not. I mean, the judge may have admonished everybody that said, you need to keep your emotions in check, and if you can't, then you're going to be asked to leave.
Yeah, and then they use that against them because she's saying all these horrible things about her dad, and I guess he was being very, like, stoic. You know, he just wasn't showing much emotion, and it's just like, well, that's weird. If someone was accusing me of doing all these terrible things, like sexually abusing my daughter and then ultimately murdering my granddaughter, like, I would be, like, up in arms. And
He's
he
also
wasn't.
a retired cop. Cops have really good poker faces.
Yeah. So.
I have a good poker face. I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should see it in the courtroom.
I can't wait. I'm gonna next time.
Okay.
I'm gonna drive down.
All right.
Got to check this out in person. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on our Instagram page or our TikTok, BTV_pod.
Let us know what you think about this case. And remember, April is Child Abuse Awareness Month. So please look out for the kiddos in your life, in your neighborhood, in your schools, wherever you may see them. Be the voice for them that they can't be for themselves.
You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.